He refused to shake a black CEO's hand minutes. Later, her power ended his career overnight. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. The boardroom was supposed to be quiet at 9:07 a.m., but the first sound that shattered the air was a man's voice, sharp, acidic, meant to slice. "Step back, you're not my equal." Richard Hale didn't just say it. He launched it like a weapon across the polished table toward the black woman who had just extended her hand to greet him. Chairs froze. Pens stopped midair. Every executive in the room turned at once, caught between shock and the kind of discomfort they couldn't mask fast enough. Dr. Maya Ellison didn't blink. She held her hand exactly where it was open, steady, unbothered like the insult hadn't landed at all. The lavender of her suit glowed under the ceiling lights, soft but commanding, a contrast to Richard's clenched jaw and reddening face. He stepped forward, voice rising. "This meeting is for senior decision-makers, not consultants, not diversity ornaments, people who actually built this company." A ripple of tension shot around the table. The young assistant in the corner, Emma, barely 24, raised her phone a little, pretending to check a notification, but the camera was already recording. Her eyes darted from Maya to Richard, horrified, confused, afraid. A man in a blue suit coughed softly, as if that could break the atmosphere. It didn't. Nobody spoke. Nobody intervened, because they all knew Richard. The temper, the ego, the entitlement. And they all knew Maya well. They thought they did. A visiting advisor. A quiet observer. Someone harmless enough to talk over. Maya dropped her hand slowly. Not in defeat, no. More like she was lowering a blade she hadn't needed to use. Her voice came calm, almost gentle. "Mr. Hale, there's no need for hostility. We're all here for the same objective." He scoffed. "The same objective? Lady, the only objective you have is staying out of the way." Then, louder, making sure the whole room heard. "People like you are always reaching for power that isn't yours." A couple of executives shifted uncomfortably. One looked at his notebook like it suddenly had something urgent to say. Maya didn't step back. She stepped forward. And that was when the atmosphere changed, quiet, subtle, like gravity rearranging itself. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Maya. Richard pointed at the door. "Stand down or step out. I won't waste time arguing with someone pretending to matter." But Maya simply tilted her head, studying him, studying the room, studying the silence of people too afraid to speak. The kind of silence she'd known all her life. The kind that taught her exactly when to stay quiet and exactly when to end a man's career. She reached into her pocket. One tap. One name spoken softly. "Carla, begin Meridian Protocol." The room didn't understand the words. Not yet, but they would. And Richard, still red, still ranting, had no idea he had just picked a fight with the wrong woman. In the wrong room. On the wrong morning. For a moment, the boardroom held its breath. Dr. Maya Ellison didn't need to raise her voice. Her stillness did the talking for her. She lowered her phone, slipped it back into her blazer pocket, and took a single step toward the table, the kind of step that doesn't make noise, but shifts the room anyway. The lavender fabric of her suit caught the overhead lights, softening her silhouette while sharpening her presence. Around her, the executives tried to pretend they were focused on their notes. They weren't. No one could look away. She took the open seat at the head of the table, not aggressively, not defensively, just naturally, like the seat was always hers. Richard scoffed loudly. "Oh, you're sitting there now? Bold move for someone without a title." Someone at the left side, Jonas from Strategy, muttered under his breath, "Jesus, man," but didn't dare say it louder. Emma, the assistant, watched Maya closely. There was no trembling, no shrinking, no attempt to justify her presence to the man who'd just humiliated her in front of the entire board. Instead, Maya folded her hands on the table, posture relaxed, eyes steady, composed, measured, like she was waiting not for permission but for the right moment to end the conversation entirely. Richard paced behind his chair, still fuming. You consultants always think you're important. You walk in here with your little slides and your buzzwords and suddenly assume you have authority. Maya didn't interrupt. She let the words fall to the floor like ash. Then she looked at the executives, not at Richard, and asked, calmly, "Shall we begin?" The room shifted again. People glanced at each other, unsure which command to follow. Richard's anger or Maya's control. A senior director cleared his throat. Well, yes, Richard slammed his fist onto the table. "No, we're not beginning anything until she leaves." He pointed at Maya as if she were a problem to be removed. "That seat is reserved for leadership, not whatever this is." Her lips curved into the smallest, almost imperceptible smile. "Not mockery. Understanding." She'd seen this scene before. Boardrooms where she was underestimated. Hallways where she was ignored. Conference tables where people assumed she didn't belong. She wasn't surprised. But the others were. Because even though no one knew who she was yet, they felt it. That strange weight in the air. That sense of inevitability. That quiet shift of gravity toward her. Emma finally whispered, barely audible. "She's not who you think she is," Richard snapped. "What did you say?" Emma froze. The room froze with her. Maya looked at the young assistant, really looked and gave a single reassuring nod. Just enough to tell Emma, "It's okay. Speak when you're ready." But she didn't need to. Because the systems Maya triggered minutes ago were already moving. A soft chime echoed from the far wall where the digital screens sat dormant. Then they flickered. Then they woke. Line by line, access logs began scrolling in bold white letters. Meridian Protocol. Ownership authentication in progress. Heads turned. Brows furrowed. Richard's reddened face drained of color. Maya didn't look at the screens. She didn't need to. She simply said, "Let's proceed." And for the first time, no one, not even Richard, could find their voice to disagree. The screens kept flickering soft, rhythmic pulses like the building itself was waking up to something it hadn't seen before. Executives shifted anxiously in their leather chairs, their eyes darting between Richard's reddening fury and the silent authority radiating off Maya. Richard stepped closer to the head of the table, invading her space without hesitation. "Don't get excited," he barked. "These systems glitch all the time. It probably kicked off some update. Nothing to do with you." But the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Maya didn't move, didn't blink, didn't react. She simply tapped a fingertip against the polished table, steady, slow, controlled, each tap echoing louder than Richard's shouting. Across the room, a stern-faced VP named Ellison leaned forward, whispering to the colleague beside him, "What protocol is Meridian?" "I've never heard of it." The colleague shook his head, voice shaky. "That's not on any of our internal playbooks." The tension thickened. Emma swallowed hard as she watched the white text scroll on the top right screen. Access cross-check. Board plus ownership plus legal. Priority level. Internal executive override. Those weren't phrases an ordinary consultant could trigger, or even a senior executive. Meanwhile, Richard was spiraling. "What kind of stunt are you pulling?" he hissed. "You think tapping at your phone and standing around in a pastel suit makes you matter here?" He turned to the room, seeking allies. Anyone? Anyone going to address the fact that she's hijacking company systems? But no one answered. Not because they agreed with him, but because something about the moment felt bigger than him, bigger than them. Maya finally lifted her eyes, meeting his directly. Her voice was smooth, unbothered. "I haven't hijacked anything, Mr. Hale." The room went still. "I simply accessed what already belongs to me." That sentence landed softly, but its meaning hit the room like a thunderclap. Richard laughed loud, forced, desperate. "Yours? This company is not yours? This board is not yours? This chair," he jabbed a finger at the seat beneath her, "is not yours." The screens disagreed. Another chime hummed through the room. The center display shifted from scrolling logs to a single line of text. Meridian Protocol. Verified, linked owner. 92% complete. A low murmur broke the silence. "That's impossible. Who has that kind of access? There's only one level above executive class." Emma's hand trembled as she set her tablet down. She didn't want to speak, but she also couldn't stay silent. She stood. "Someone needs to say this," she whispered. "Mr. Hale, she's not a consultant. I checked the briefing this morning. She's—" "Sit down." Richard's command cracked like a whip. Emma flinched, but didn't sit. "She's listed under owner access. Level 1. The same level only the acquiring parent entity receives. Gasps rippled through the room. Richard's face contorted. Lies, that's impossible. The parent entity is... A new alert interrupted him. Meridian Protocol. Ownership match 96%. Standby for identity display. Richard's voice broke. Turn that off, now. Maya didn't even look up. Her voice was velvet and steel all at once. Mr. Hale, the protocol won't stop just because you're uncomfortable. Silence. Heavy. Inescapable. Because everyone in that room could feel it. The storm wasn't coming. The storm was already here. The room felt smaller now, as if the walls themselves were leaning in, listening. The screens dimmed for a single breath, then brightened again, this time with the company's crest rotating slowly in the center. A low hum rolled through the vents, subtle but present, like the building was exhaling. All eyes began to drift toward Maya, not with certainty, but with suspicion, curiosity, fear, except one. Emma, the young assistant, hadn't sat back down. Her fingers were laced together tightly, knuckles pale, as she took a shaky breath and stepped forward not far, just enough to be seen. Maya, she began before catching herself. Dr. Ellison, Richard spun toward her. Not another word. You're done here if you keep talking. Emma froze, swallowing hard, but Maya shook her head gently. Let her speak. There was no force in her voice, no command, just permission, quiet and firm. And somehow, that was stronger than anything Richard had said all morning. Emma exhaled, the tension in her shoulders dropping just slightly. She held her tablet tight to her chest, eyes flicking between Maya and the glowing screens overhead. I checked the morning briefing, she whispered. We were told a strategic observer was visiting, but the access tag next to your name, I've never seen anything like it. The room shifted again. Lawson, the stern VP, leaned in with narrowed eyes. What tag? Emma opened her tablet with shaking fingers. The screen illuminated her face. Owner access level 1, she read aloud. A few executives inhaled sharply. Someone muttered, Dear God. Richard snapped instantly. That's a clerical error. She forged that. It probably flagged the wrong file. Emma shook her head. No, sir. I checked manually. It was verified. Twice. She hesitated, then took a tiny step closer to Maya. I didn't say anything earlier because I thought maybe it was confidential, but now... Richard's voice burst like a grenade. Enough. He slapped Emma's tablet out of her hands. It skidded across the table, spinning to a stop in front of Maya. That was the moment the room changed, not because of the device hitting the wood, but because of the looks that spread across the executives' faces: shock, disgust, indignation. Lawson stood halfway out of his chair. Richard, what the hell is wrong with you? But Richard wasn't listening. He jabbed a finger at Emma like she was the enemy. You don't defend her. You don't speak for her. She doesn't belong in this boardroom, and neither do you if you're going to spread lies. Emma's breathing turned sharp, uneven. For a moment, she looked like she might crumble. Then, Maya rose. Slowly, calmly, deliberately. Every head turned. Even the screens seemed to pause in mid-refresh. She picked up Emma's tablet and handed it back to her with steady hands. No one, Maya said, eyes locked on Richard, strikes down the truth in this room. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The weight behind it was enough to silence everything. A final chime cut through the air. Meridian Protocol. Ownership authentication. 99%. Displaying identity upon final match. Richard staggered a single step backward. The color drained from his cheeks. Emma exhaled shakily, her courage returning in small waves. And the room, every executive, every assistant, every bystander braced, because whatever happened next wasn't just clarification. It was revelation. The final chime didn't just echo. It vibrated a low, metallic pulse that sank into the room's spine. Every screen faded to black, waiting, holding its breath just like the people beneath them. Richard stepped back again, bumping into the chair behind him. He didn't sit, couldn't. His eyes darted from screen to screen, hunting for an exit from a situation already far beyond his control. This is a malfunction, he muttered. Some kind of system bug. It should have patched this weeks ago. But his voice quivered, thinning with every syllable. Across the table, Maya remained standing, elegant, still, unbroken. Her presence alone made the air feel tighter, thicker, like the moment before a storm breaks open the sky. Flashback cut in. She was 19 again, standing in a crowded internship fair. A white recruiter shook every hand in line, every single one, until he reached her. He paused, looked her up and down, and said, "We only shake hands with applicants who match our brand." Then he stepped past her. That same sting flickered in her chest, now faint, not fresh, but remembered. The kind of memory that strengthens bone. Back to present. Richard slammed his palm flat on the table. "I don't care what the screens say. I don't care what some intern claims. You," he jabbed the air toward Maya, "are not above me." Maya didn't respond. Her silence forced him to fill the void with more rage. "You show up unannounced, dressed like some corporate influencer, and think you can take control of this boardroom? You're delusional." Executives grimaced. Lawson pinched the bridge of his nose. Someone whispered, "He should stop. He needs to stop." Emma, hands trembling but determined, stepped forward again. "Mr. Hale, please. She didn't do anything to deserve." "Shut up," Richard barked. The crack in his voice made the assistant flinch. Maya's eyes shifted, not angrily, but sharply, like a blade turning just enough to catch the light. "Don't speak to her again," she said softly. Richard laughed, a loud, ugly sound. "You don't get to tell me what to do. You're nobody here." The lights flickered. Every screen lit simultaneously. Meridian Protocol authentication complete. Identity lock, displaying primary owner file. The room leaned forward as if pulled by gravity. "No, no, no, no," Richard whispered. "Turn it off. Turn it off." His panic stoked the room's unease. Chairs scraped. Heartbeats quickened. Hands gripped armrests. But the screens didn't care about his volume, or his fear, or his years of entitlement. They obeyed only one person in that room. Maya inhaled slowly, deep, steady, the breath of someone who'd fought battles like this 100 times before and survived every one. Then, click, the company crest dissolved into a photograph, a headshot. Professional, poised, undeniable. The name beneath it glowed in silver. Dr. Maya Ellison sole ownership, holding 82% control. The room erupted not in noise but in silence. A heavy, crushing silence. Emma covered her mouth. Lawson sank back in his chair. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Only Richard moved. He stumbled backward until his shoulders hit the glass wall. His voice came out cracked, thin, broken. "No, that can't," but it could. And it was, because the breaking point wasn't the reveal. It was the realization. Everything he had said, every insult, every dismissal, every ounce of contempt had been aimed at the woman who owned the very room he was standing in, and there was no undoing it now. No one reached for their notebooks now. No one coughed, or shifted, or pretended to stay neutral. The entire boardroom sat frozen under the glow of the screens, each one broadcasting the same truth. Dr. Maya Ellison, primary owner, 82% control, absolute authority. Richard's breath turned shallow, but he still tried to salvage air that no longer belonged to him. This is a trick," he sputtered. "Some kind of power play. The board would never—" "The board," Lawson cut in sharply, "was bought out last quarter." He swallowed hard, realizing too late what he had confirmed. His eyes slid to Maya. You were the acquiring party." Maya didn't nod, didn't smile, didn't claim the moment the way a lesser person might have. She simply stood there, hands gently clasped, letting the reality settle like dust on polished glass. Richard staggered forward, desperate now. "Why didn't anyone tell me? Why wasn't I briefed?" His voice cracked. "I should have been told." Lawson exhaled, a low breath of disbelief. "You missed the briefing. You were golfing in Scottsdale that week." A few executives closed their eyes. The irony was too brutal to ignore. Maya took a seat slow, deliberate at the head of the table, not snatching authority, claiming what was already hers. She placed her phone on the table, screen down. A simple gesture, but somehow heavier than any gavel. Dr. Ellison," an operations director stammered. "Do you want us to continue with the Q2 projections, or—" Maya raised a hand. "Just slightly. That was enough." "No," she said. "We're not moving forward until we address what just happened." A murmur flickered around the room, gentle, nervous, uncertain. Richard tried to dig his heels in. "You don't get to weaponize a glitch against me. I have tenure here. Seniority. This company respects loyalty. This company," Maya interrupted softly, "respects integrity." The words didn't strike like a slap. They landed like a mirror, reflecting, exposing, undeniable. She tapped her phone once. "Carla," she said calmly, "elevate Meridian to phase 2. A chime echoed from overhead. Meridian Phase 2 initiated. Logging incident. Audio plus video plus employee behavior. A few execs inhaled sharply. The room suddenly felt brighter, too bright. Richard froze. What does Phase 2 do? He asked, voice trembling. Maya didn't answer him. She looked at Emma instead, the young assistant whose courage had cracked open the first fault line in the room. Emma, Maya said gently, please take a seat. Your role here is safe. Emma's eyes filled subtle, not dramatic. She nodded and sat, hands clasped over her tablet like a lifeline. Richard's panic surged. You're punishing me for one misunderstanding? For not recognizing someone who hides behind a fake title? Maya blinked once. Slowly. There was no misunderstanding. She leaned back in her chair, voice unshaken. You refused to shake my hand. You demeaned me in front of your peers. You silenced the truth. You intimidated your staff. And you did it all because you believed I didn't matter. Silence swallowed the room. Then, Maya's tone lowered, rich and controlled. But the real issue isn't that you didn't know who I was. She let the sentence hang in the air, a quiet blade. It's that you didn't care who you were talking to. A soft gasp came from someone at the far end of the table. Richard opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Because Phase 2 wasn't just recording him, it was counting down his last moments in power. And everyone in the room, everyone except Richard, could already see how this was going to end. The ceiling lights steadied. The screens froze on the ownership display. And for the first time since the meeting started, no one dared look at Richard, because every eye in the room was pinned to Maya. She didn't stand. She didn't need to. Sitting at the head of the table, she carried the quiet weight of someone who'd already won long before the battle began. Richard clung to the last scraps of his authority. You think a few fancy protocols make you untouchable? He snapped. This is still my boardroom. I've run this place for 15 years. I built this division with my bare hands. Maya tilted her head slightly, studying him the way someone studies a man digging his own grave. Did you? She asked softly. Because according to the acquisition records, you've been sinking it for the last 5. Oh. A strangled whisper escaped a director near the end of the table. Someone else stifled a cough, the kind meant to disguise a laugh. But no one dared speak out loud. Richard's face contorted. This has gone far enough. You don't get to insult my contributions. You don't get to undermine me in front of my team. You don't... Maya raised one hand. Just one. Richard's words evaporated like steam. And then, with the camera of Emma's tablet still recording, with the screens humming softly behind her, with the entire board holding its breath, Maya spoke the line that would later circle every social platform, every leadership forum, every workplace blog that had ever known silence in the face of prejudice. Her voice was low, measured, unapologetically lethal. You called me a fraud in a company I own. The words didn't echo. They settled heavy, final, absolute. Emma's breath caught. Lawson's pen slipped from his fingers. Two executives exchanged looks that said everything without a sound. Richard, meanwhile, stuttered backward like he'd been physically hit. No, that's not, you can't just, that phrase, that sentence. He shook his head, eyes wide, panic creeping into the edges. You're twisting things, Maya continued, her tone even sharper now, cutting with precision rather than volume. You dismissed me before I even introduced myself. You belittled a woman you believed had no power, and you did it with confidence. She leaned forward slightly. That confidence was your downfall. The room didn't move. Couldn't move, because the truth wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't violent. It was simply undeniable. Behind her, the center screen shifted again. Meridian Phase 3 ready, awaiting owner command. Richard swallowed hard, throat tight. What's Phase 3? He whispered, voice breaking. Maya didn't answer him. She didn't need to. The executives already knew. Emma knew. Even the walls seemed to know. Phase 3 was the part where consequences stopped being theoretical, the part where the old power structure cracked and collapsed. And Maya Ellison, sitting in the chair Richard believed he owned, looked at him with a calm that only one kind of person carries, a person who no longer has anything to prove, but has everything to correct. The room had shifted from tense to suffocating. No one leaned back in their chair anymore. No one scribbled notes, or pretended to focus on spreadsheets, or tried to look busy. Every person present understood exactly what was happening. Power was changing hands. No power was returning to the hands where it had always belonged. Richard wiped his palms on his suit jacket. trying to hide the sweat forming along his hairline. The man who had strutted into the room full of arrogance now looked like a trapped animal searching for an exit that wasn't there. Maya, Dr. Ellison, look, this is all escalating too quickly, he stammered. We can talk about this. Clear the misunderstanding. Reset the room. I'm sure none of this was intentional. And Maya's gaze didn't waver. Everything that happened in this room was intentional, she replied, her voice steady as a heartbeat. You meant every word you said. You meant every action you took. And now so do I. A soft electronic ping interrupted the silence. The screens shifted again. Meridian Phase 3. Employee Behavioral Review active. HR plus legal receiving live feed. A director whispered, "Oh my God." Another covered his mouth. Richard stared at the screen like it was a firing squad. "This is illegal," he barked. "You can't stream internal meetings to legal without consent." Lawson shook his head slowly. "Phase, graded protocols don't need consent. They're owner-authorized processes." He swallowed, then added under his breath, "And she's the owner." Emma sat straighter, glancing at Maya, awe flickering behind her worry. Richard pointed at Lawson. "You shut up. You don't know anything. None of you do." He turned back to Maya, pleading leaking into his tone. "You can't end my career over a tone issue, a misunderstanding. You blindsided me." Maya placed her hands lightly on the table, her posture graceful and still. "I didn't blindside you," she said. "You underestimated me." She tapped her phone twice. Another chime. Sharper this time. Legal department connected. Real-time review in progress. Executives stiffened. Shoulders rose. Breaths hitched. Richard's voice dropped into panic. "Stop this. Stop all of this now." But Maya wasn't even looking at him. Her attention shifted to Emma instead. "Would you retrieve the compliance binder from the cabinet behind you?" she asked gently. Emma blinked, startled by the normalcy of the request, then stood and moved to the file cabinet. Her hands no longer trembled. Maya's calm was bleeding into her, anchoring her. Richard stepped forward, pointing aggressively. "Don't help her," he hissed. "You work for me." "No," Lawson cut in sharply. "She works for the company." He glanced at Maya. "And the company works for her." A thin, collective gasp rippled through the board. Emma returned with the binder and placed it in front of Maya with quiet reverence. Maya opened it slowly, deliberately flipping through pages until she reached the section she wanted. Her fingertip tapped a clause. "Mr. Hale, your contract states that malicious conduct toward colleagues, abuse of authority, and obstruction of internal audits are grounds for immediate removal." Richard's eyes widened. "That's exaggerated." "Fortunately," Maya said, lifting her gaze to meet his, "your actions were recorded from multiple angles." Her eyes flicked toward Emma's tablet, still capturing every second. "And Phase 3, she added, ensures legal has already seen enough." The room didn't explode. It imploded quietly, inwardly as realization dawned. This wasn't a disciplinary meeting. This wasn't a warning. This wasn't even a power struggle. This was the moment Richard Hale's career ended, and Maya Ellison hadn't raised her voice once. No one breathed when Maya closed the compliance binder. Not because she slammed it. She didn't. She eased it shut with a quiet, measured motion that somehow echoed louder than Richard's shouts had all morning. Richard stood trembling, a man who finally understood that the ground beneath him was no longer solid. "Maya, you don't have to do this," he pleaded. His voice had shrunk nu bark, nu arrogancy, nu bite, just fear. She didn't reply. Not to him. Her eyes scanned the room instead, observing the executives who had watched in silence, who had let cruelty happen because speaking up was harder than looking away. One by one, they lowered their gaze. Except Emma, she sat straighter, tablet still recording, lips pressed tight with conviction she didn't know she had until this moment. Richard noticed her posture, her courage, and snapped. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" he spat. "Recording me like some villain. You think helping her will save your job?" Emma didn't look at him. She looked at Maya. "I'm helping the truth," she said softly. And that was the moment the room shifted. A director at the far left lifted his chin. "She's right." A VP in Navy leaned forward. "Richard, you crossed a line today." "Several." Someone else murmured. "We all saw it. This isn't defensible." Richard spun, pointing at each of them like broken pillars. "You're all turning on me now? Because of one woman?" He stopped mid-sentence, because at that exact moment, His security badge vibrated. Hard. He looked down. The light, the green circle that proved he belonged in this building, flickered once, twice, then turned red, solid, unwavering. Final. Gasps erupted around the table. "Access revoked," someone whispered. "Oh my God." Richard stumbled backward, gripping the edge of a chair to stay upright. No, this is a mistake. Maya finally spoke. "There are no mistakes today." Her tone wasn't cold. It wasn't angry. It was resolute. She turned to the executives, not Richard. "I'm holding this organization to a higher standard, and that begins with accountability." Zero. A ripple of guilt crossed several faces. People exchanged uneasy glances, each wondering what they could have done differently in the last 30 minutes. Or the last 3 years. Then the most surprising thing happened. Lawson, the stern VP, stood, not halfway, fully. Then he walked toward Maya's side of the table and stopped beside her chair, not looming over her, not intruding, standing with her. "In my 22 years here," he said, voice steady, "I've never seen someone handle abuse with the level of composure Dr. Ellison just demonstrated." He turned, staring straight at Richard. "And I've never seen leadership behavior as disgraceful as yours." 2 more executives stood. Then another. Then another. Not cheering, not clapping, just standing, aligning themselves with integrity, dignity, truth. Richard looked around as if the room had betrayed him, but he had betrayed himself long before anyone else had. This isn't fair," he whispered brokenly. Maya rose to her feet, the quiet storm in human form. "Fair," she said, "is finally happening." Her eyes swept the room, landing on each person who stood with her. "The problem wasn't that he didn't know who I was." She paused, letting the words sink in. "The problem is how many of you were willing to let him act this way because you assumed I was nobody." A collective exhale rippled through the room. Shame, awakening, reckoning. And for the first time that morning, the boardroom didn't feel like Richard's territory, or even neutral ground. It felt like her room, her domain, her standard. The moment the room stood behind Maya, something inside Richard snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in the small, terrified way a man realizes he has finally run out of places to hide. His badge continued glowing red against his chest. He pressed it frantically, as if pressure alone could force it back to green. It didn't. A new alert blinked across the screens. Legal confirmation received. Termination review complete. Awaiting owner finalization. Maya didn't move. She simply watched him, her expression unreadable calm, restrained, almost sorrowful in a way that made the moment heavier. Richard's voice came out small, almost childlike. "Please, you don't want to do this. I can apologize. I can take sensitivity training. HR can mediate." "Richard," she said softly, "this isn't about apologies." Her voice carried no anger. "Just truth. It's about culture, about expectations, about the kind of leadership this company allows and the kind it no longer will." It blinked rapidly, his desperation exposed. "You don't understand what this means for me. My reputation, my future, my family." Maya held his gaze. "I understand exactly what it means. And I also understand what your behavior meant for every person you've dismissed, belittled, and silenced over the years." She allowed a brief silence, the kind that forces a man to confront himself. Then she turned to Emma. "Please hand me your tablet." Emma stood instantly, walked it over, and placed it in Maya's hands with quiet confidence. On screen, the recording timeline glowed bright red from the moment Richard first raised his voice to now. The entire truth captured perfectly. Maya tapped a single icon. Export incident file. Send to HR plus, legal. Submit owner decision. Richard's knees buckled. No, please, don't do this." But Maya wasn't even looking at him anymore. Her eyes were on the executives, the people responsible for building the future of her company. "This is not punishment," she said. "This is alignment." Another chime. Access, permanently revoked. Employment, terminated. Escort requested. Richard let out a sound between a gasp and a sob. The door clicked open behind him as 2 members of corporate security stepped inside, calm, professional, expectant. He turned back to Maya one last time, searching for mercy in a place he had offered none. But all he found was truth. "You ended your own career," she said gently. "I just confirmed it." The door closed behind Richard with a soft final click, the kind of sound that didn't need volume to be permanent. For a long, weighted moment, no one moved. It was as if the boardroom itself was recalibrating, rewriting the rules of who held power and why. Maya remained standing, Emma's tablet still in her hands. The screens overhead dimmed into a soft corporate blue, their alerts fading now that the crisis had passed. A symbolic reset. Emma exhaled shakily, only now realizing she'd been holding her breath for minutes. She looked at Maya with something between relief and awe. "Thank you," she whispered. Maya turned, meeting her eyes. "Don't thank me," she said gently. "Thank yourself. You spoke when it mattered. Most people don't." Emma swallowed hard, because she knew that was true. She had almost stayed silent like everyone else. Lawson cleared his throat, stepping forward. He wasn't the same stiff, distant VP he'd been an hour earlier. There was humility in his posture now. "Dr. Ellison, I owe you an apology, all of us do." He gestured lightly toward the others. "We let that behavior go on for far too long. We looked away when we should have intervened." Several executives nodded, shame widening their eyes. But Maya didn't weaponize the moment. She didn't lecture them, didn't bask in the reversal. She simply said, "Culture is built by the behavior you reward and the behavior you tolerate. Today, we changed both." The room absorbed her words like a lesson it should have learned years ago. One director, older, gray-haired, lifted a timid hand. "What happens now, Doctor?" "Ellison, with leadership, with structure, with us." Maya stepped toward the center of the table, calm as tidewater, unwavering in presence. "Now," she said, "now we start fresh." Her voice softened, but the strength beneath it was unmistakable. No more looking the other way. No more silence. No more fear of holding each other accountable. This company will rise to the standard we set today. A quiet ripple of resolve passed through the board. Emma straightened. Lawson nodded. The others exchanged glances that weren't fearful anymore, but ready. Maya placed the tablet down, finally taking her seat again at the head of the table. "This room will not return to what it was," she said. "And neither will we." And for the first time all morning, the boardroom felt lighter, almost hopeful. Maya rose from her chair, gathering the room's attention without raising her voice. Sunlight spilled across the table, framing her like the calm after a storm. "This company will mirror the standard we uphold," she said. Not the loudest voice in the room, but the strongest character. She turned toward the door Richard had been escorted through only for a breath, then back to her team. "I didn't raise my voice today," she said softly. "I raised the standard." And in that stillness, the board understood. A new era had begun.